experiences those specific things of being a male that allows gender-specific problems that necessarily sometimes get lost in the greater conversation.
Right. Like what?
Right. I mean, so school to prison pipelines.
But here's the deal. If I pull the data right now, the suspension rates for black boys is on par with the suspension rates of black girls. So again, the only thing I'm asking is when I hear the nuances of black men, what I want to know is, what's the nuance?
Well, economic opportunity. I would say that's one of them. Funding for education. Our education system is broken. Okay, let's stop right there. Okay, funding for education. If black boys going to school and the black girls going to school, they're under the same funding paradigm. No. I'm not talking college. I'm talking like elementary school, middle school, high school. So, school funding is not based upon gender. School funding is based upon enrollment. But I would also say representation is extremely important for young black males as well. Representation of what? Like teachers in the classroom. That's right. There needs to be more black teachers, more black male presence in the classroom. So here's what I'm trying to get at. I've had this conversation in so many different places, but what rarely happens are folks actually identifying the specific things that are different and they want addressed that then somebody can then address. And that to me is where the struggle is. I think what we have to, because here's what we have to do. We have to actually push back when somebody throws it out to force them to be specific. So, for instance, in this piece, and I've actually heard it, in this piece, the brother said, there's a perception that the Democratic Party is a party of women. Because, I'm telling you, I've heard this, a lot of brothers are bothered by when they hear black girl magic. And I'm just, if we're gonna do with perceptions, I've heard this. I've heard brothers say, all I'm seeing are women being appointed and being touted. And I then go, okay, so they've done 200 federal judges, 58 black, 37 black women, 21 black men. I then ask them, how many existing federal judges are black men compared to black women? They can't answer that question because there's way more black men. So then I had a brother say, well, I'm seeing all these sisters. Supreme Court Justice, I'm like, okay, Ketanji Brown Jackson, that's one sister. There've only been 3 black people, 2 of them black men. There are 4 United States senators right now who are black, 1 black woman, LaFonza Butler, who leaves in January, and 3 black men. I then say, okay, there are more black male members of the U.S. House than black women. So I start walking these things through, and what I say to brothers is, okay, you're responding to recent history because they've been frozen out. 1972, Shirley Chisholm did not go to the black political convention in Gary, Indiana, because the black men there were clear they weren't going to support her for president. So I think what we have to do is we also have to, I think we as black men have to have some real conversations to brothers as well to say, if you're responding to certain things you're seeing, now ask, why am I seeing that? Because you're also correcting what are historical historical realities of folks being frozen out. And so that to me is a problem, because also if I started naming who are your top black Democratic leaders, Hakeem Jeffries, minority leader, man, Jim Clyburn, man, Jamie Harrison, head of the DNC, man. I mean, we could just start naming folks. And that to me, again, I think what has to happen, there has to be the constant pushback. Because if we don't force these brothers to have to answer that, I get feelings, I get perceptions, but I want to get down to, no, let me get to the core. What is your fundamental issue? And I think part of the problem with this conversation, I'm going to come to you, then I'm going to come to you, is that we are not pushing them to have to answer that central question. We are allowing emotions and perceptions and kind of stuff, what I heard, to rule that's not rooted in reality.
Sure. So I wholeheartedly agree with that. But I do also want to kind of go back to understanding the nature of the black male socialization process, right? So we go back to Black men, one, we're not allowed to emote. We're expected to have it all. And we're expected to perform. The way we engage in society, the way we feel validated and love society is based on performance, right? So, and the only way we're allowed to emote that is valid is through anger or through kind of sexual prowess, right? Especially growing up young, especially growing up here in Philly, right? That leads you to negative consequences, right? So if you get led on that path to negative consequences, you don't have folks that give you the right tools, organizations like yourself, where folks can actually have social support and all these other things that lead you to those specific negative consequences, was that jail or in a grave or anything else, right? So those things, and then also, okay, so say you make it past there, middle school, high school, you get to college, right? You get to college, as a black man, you expect to have money. As a black man, again, you're expected to perform. You're in college, where you getting money from, right? Where you getting necessarily these things? So I think the nature of the experience, again, is really understanding the pressures of performance without support that black men go through, and not to say that black women don't go through as well, that aren't necessarily immediately tied to the larger political process if folks aren't having those continued conversations. So us here on the Mayor's Council for African American Males, we have those conversations in those communities, and Ryan is on that commission as well.
But what you're seeing though in the data though, what you're seeing is you're seeing millennial and Gen Z men becoming far more conservative than their female counterparts. And so there's a reason, Ryan, why Donald Trump, actually coming to you next, then Ryan. There's a reason why Trump is specifically going to these millennial Gen Z podcasters. Because what you have is Fox News, Stephen Miller's of the world, Jesse Waters of the world, Josh Hawley, senator from Missouri, they are on this whole manhood. So what they're doing is they are talking about that we're becoming a feminine nation. And so what they're doing, they're pushing the buttons of a lot of these young men. Oh, you're soft, and then now they're appealing to them that way. These gender dynamics are playing. And so political folks are looking at this by saying, wait a minute, what's going on here in terms of why these younger men, not just black, are appealing? Because Trump is presenting himself as this strong, tough, rugged, John Wayne type person. And I get all of that, but I'm sitting here going, keep in mind, John Wayne, ain't got nothing for you beyond his attitude and persona. So if you want to vote for persona, I get it, but let me let you know what's behind that persona, and then you can be like, oh my God, what did I do? Now it's too late. And I had a brother say, well, I'm seeing all these sisters. Supreme Court Justice. I'm like, okay, Ketanji Brown Jackson, that's one sister. There've only been 3 black people, 2 of them black men. There are 4 United States senators right now who are black, 1 black woman, LaFonza Butler, who leaves in January, and 3 black men.
A lot of black people laughed at Trump not wanting to get fact-checked during the debate or interviews, but the truth is a lot of black men don't want to get fact-checked either on their nasty, hateful rhetoric. And I thank Roland for coming with the facts, actually forcing them to confront reality. He kept asking, what is this nuance? What is this point y'all are trying to make? Let me tell you, the demographics are exactly the same as white racists who see one black person get a job and say, oh my God, they're taking over. The demographics have been claiming that black women are overrepresented because they don't want to see any. They don't want to see even one out of, quote, their place, which is in their mind often the kitchen or the house, something that's, serving them. And while we're on the subject, they hate Ketanji and they hate Kamala, not just because those women married out, but because they take this as an outward sign that those women are not existing to serve their interest. What are their interests? For many, permanent victimhood. Please go back and watch the whole video. But in the beginning, Roland says, what are these special interests of black men that you feel like these black women in power are not serving? And the dude said, oh, well, education, we need more funding. We need more this. Or education is especially hard on black men. He said, what are you talking about? Black girls are getting suspended at the same rate. He said, oh, funding. He said, if they're going to the same school, they're getting the same funding. Like, it's not determined on gender. The school gets the same amount of funding. It's determined on numbers of students. And I've always felt like that was pseudoscientific BS. Yes, there is a school to prison pipeline, and it affects black girls just as much as black boys. Black girls are adultified. They're suspended at the same elevated rates. They face over discipline, and yet we're still the most educated group. We still go on to college. Because like Roland said, okay, we're not talking about college. We're talking about elementary. We're talking about secondary school. We're talking about high school. So what are you saying? They're getting the same everything. They're getting the same funding. They're getting the same teachers. They're getting the same books. What the devil are you talking about? Black boys and girls exist in the same classroom. But these men spew a whole bunch of pseudoscientific BS because they want the freedom to do nothing. They want to be absolved of all consequences. Oh, well, it was the school to prison pipeline. It was the profiling. It was the this. It was the that. Those are all the reasons I could never make anything out of myself. Because whenever anybody actually does the hard research, it's a black woman. The New Jim Crow, which is the seminal text on mass incarceration, is by Michelle Alexander, a black woman. Most of the text on like the history of black Americans, how specific incidents like World War II, etc., affected them specifically, those are by black women, like Creating Black Americans by Nell Painter, or she also did the history of white people, discussing the formation of race, the history of racist laws, and how that impacts us. Dead Aid, talking about the effects of things like the World Bank, IMF, imperialism, colonialism on Africa by Dr. Dambisa Moyo. These men just want to regurgitate the talking points and research of black women to excuse their lack of development. These women are looking for solutions. Look at the title of Dead Aid. Why aid is not working and how there is a better way for Africa. How to move forward. This is also the woman who predicted China's neo-imperialism of Africa long before anybody else was talking about it. She has a book about that as well. The point is, black women see what's coming and they say, here's what should be done. Black men want to use this work, or some black men, whatever, want to use this work as an excuse not to move forward. Oh, well, see, we have all these obstacles and look at the laws that have been made against us and look at how we're over-policed and mass incarcerated and labeled, and that's why we can't produce. And when Roland got to holding them accountable for what they were saying, they were spinning out. You know, he said, okay, so the funding is the same. The conditions are the same for black boys and girls. So what exactly do you want to be changed? And the guy's like, better representation. They need more black male teachers. Like, there should be more black male teachers. Baby, who's stopping you from making some? Who is stopping you from going and teaching? Who's stopping you from applying? That's what they'll do. They will say these great sweeping statements, like you expect somebody to put in an executive order, a teacher draft or something. This is something you could solve on your own on the micro level. Go into the community and have men apply to be teachers. But you don't want a solution. You want to complain. And quiet as it's kept, a lot of you are not allowed to work with children. And a bunch more of you need to be barred because the ones who are regurgitating points like, oh, Diddy and Cosby, you know, it's just an assault on the black man and they should be able to do whatever because the white man gets away with it. If you're saying that men of your complexion ought to be able to harm and grape without consequence because other men do it, I don't want you anywhere near children. Is there some systemic problem that's keeping you all from being in the classroom other than the fact that felons aren't allowed to work with kids? Tell me more. What I was saying before, what they're arguing for is the freedom to be permanent victims, to never be held accountable for anything. Everything's always supposed to be someone else's fault. And because of all of the problems in the system, which some of which are very real, it's not that these things don't exist, but you want to not solve them so you can be absolved of responsibility. And you don't like people like Roland Martin pointing out the fact that black women and men have the same hurdles. Black women have more hurdles because it exposes you as mediocre and less than mediocre. Quiet as it's kept, most of y'all ain't like Obama either, but you did give him the vote. You did give him the support because you can point to him and say, that's our victory. A black man has been the president. Kamala wins. That'll be a 1-to-1 ratio. One black woman, one black man. And I'm not going back and forth on her blackness because she's got the same phenotype and the same amount of blackness as him. They each have one black parent, one non-black parent. So all those other things were the excuse, not the reason. When they, say, oh, she's not black enough. Oh, she's not this. We don't like that she's married to a white man. We don't like that she was a prosecutor. We don't like that she was the attorney general. Oh, more black men. Like, those become their sound bites. Those become their rallying cries and their talking points. But it was never the reason. It was only the excuse. What they don't like is that in their mind, women like Kamala and Ketanji don't center them. They don't buy into this mythology of their victimhood. But more than that, they just don't like what these women represent. With Obama, they still had all the excuses in the world. Well, he had whatever white privilege because he was raised by his white mother and her white mother's family. He had this and he had that. He didn't have to struggle. He didn't have to get it out the mud. So at the end of the day, he still has white privilege. Ketanji is on the same level. Where's her privilege? Kamala's on that same level. Where's her privilege? They can no longer use the excuse that somebody else had a magic pill that catapulted them to success. And that's why they're trying to say, oh, Kamala, did whatever to get to the top. They want to believe that. They have to believe that. Anything other than examine themselves. Oh, she's on top because the white man put her on top. Oh, this is a whatever. She's a shill. She's a cipher. She's a figurehead. Whatever. They can make themselves believe so they don't have to take accountability. Other people are growing. They are outpacing you. The world is going on. While you're making excuses and still trying to be breastfed like a little doggone baby, we're out here actually doing the work and getting the results. And you can't stand to see it. And you'd rather burn the country down than acknowledge the fact you are mediocre and less than mediocre. I loved when Roland said, your perceptions and your emotions are not reality. They're not facts. And that's what these men need to do. They love to say on their podcast, facts over feelings. Baby, the fact is your feelings don't matter. The fact is we have the same obstacles and more. And the only nuance that, exists for black men is misogynoir. That's it. You're trying to make your hurt fifis over the fact that black women are doing better into an argument to vote for a white supremacist. And it's not one. I mean, you're free. You're free to vote for whoever you want, but stop lying about why you're doing it. And stop acting like you're entitled to something you're not entitled to. They're the first ones to talk about entitlement programs. Oh, cut off welfare, cut off this, cut off that. Why? So y'all can starve? Because you may not apply, but you're living off a woman who has it. The more global the world becomes and the more these women step up, the more these men are exposed as the frauds they are. They are not victims. They are losers. And they can't handle the truth. That's it. Like and follow for more.